regard to this. So now I've turned on the audio in regard to the podcast proper in regard to that. But we played initially the sounds of the audio from the music and in regard to that. But this time I'm reading from the meditation that we have that we'll share with you as you provide us with your email address at info@iwillrestore. And we're going to read in particular from the book by Thomas Thorowitz, the Edinburgh Lectures, or the Doré Lectures that he did. He's writing toward the end, I believe, of the 19th century, the 1800s. So it's not my writing necessarily, but I begin with the introduction of the, this was called the 8 Days of Transformation, Transmutation, Meditation. And so it had a front cover. But I begin by saying this book is a combination and culmination of consideration and concentration of ideas from a number of inspired and inspiring authors, as well as personal inspiration over the years. The first picture, which is the cover, has to do with the idea of a cartoon entitled Pinky and the Brain. The second picture has to do with the idea of a tractor beam from the original Star Trek television series. It also has to do with the idea of possible futures, which any child who watches the Marvel Comic Universe, MCU, heroes like Doctor Strange, who in the movie Endgame, he calculated the number of possible futures from a situation the Avengers face. Someone asked him how many possible futures there were. He replied, 14,000,005. He was then asked of that number, how many of those possible futures the Avengers and himself would survive. He replied, 1. The rays from the brain, this particular picture, more like the mind, have the intent to encourage you to ascribe to do the piece of work, the same piece of, in the piece of silence of meditation and affirmation, what Dr. Strange did. Focus on the possible futures that assure you that you will thrive and survive. The third picture of this particular meditation is a set of double thumbs, which I have, double thumbs. These are the double thumbs of Dennis L. Waters Sr., me. In the Marvel Universe, I would love to be Doctor Strange and Black Panther, a double. In the biblical world, I imagined I would be a prophet, priest, and king. That was King David. Here is my intent with you, what was a gift to me, or better, a set of gifts to me over time. This combination. These are the ideas of people, words heard from others. I read some of them, some of the people I read. Some are alive in this domain. Others have passed on to another level of living. This is a practice manual. This is something that you do. So what I'm talking about is something that you do. Set aside time to both study the manual and practice or do the work of the manual. This includes the manual and other accompanying booklets and pamphlets that go along with the manual. Now, indeed, intend to attend a seminar or workshop where live presenters are present to teach, to instruct, to train on the use of the manual or the material. Now convey to you the thoughts. Nothing conveys to you the thoughts, emotions, and energy of this material like a live presentation. And one day you may be the person who presents it. You may be the person who presents it. You can take 21 days. It normally takes 21 of doing something for it to become a habit. So this is a meditation manual. And so if you're doing it once a day, 21 days. If you do it twice a day, and then you do it in such a way that makes it even better. And if you do it over 42 days or 7 weeks or 7 days each, and then that's 49 days. But you keep a journal as you do the meditation and the whole piece in regard to that. So that's what we're encouraging you to do, is it's the 8 days of transformation, transmutation, ascended transcendency meditation is really what we're talking about here. I would like to share with you a few chapters from the book that I just mentioned, the Doré Lectures of Mental Science. I had the text since the early 2000s. This is 2023, and so I've had the text for a while. And pay particular attention to these chapters. One is called the Desire, the other one is the Alpha and Omega, and the other one is the Octave. The Octave is 8. the 8. So we have the 8 A's, which is the reason for their inclusion here. Also, the 8 A's were delivered to me. I've told you this before. And so that whole piece in regard to this. So I'm looking at this item. It's called desire as the motive power. There are certain Oriental schools, he begins to talk about them, and what he says in regard to them, he says that there are these schools that try to say that you should never desire anything in regard to life. Their entire idea is to annihilate all desire. They say, reach that point at which you have no wish for anything and you will find yourself free, is the sum and substance of their teaching. And in support of this, they put forward a great deal of specious argument, which is all the more likely to entangle the unwary because it contains a recognition of many of the profoundest truths of nature. But we must bear in mind that it is possible to have a very deep knowledge of psychological facts and at the same time vitiate the results of our knowledge by an entirely wrong assumption in regard to the law which binds these facts together in the universal system. So what he's saying is that you can have a lot of profound truths about nature, but then because you start with a wrong assumption, you actually mess the whole thing up. You can have a lot of knowledge, you put it together, truths about nature, but then when you put it all together, and this deep knowledge of psychological fact, you vitiate the results of our knowledge by an entirely wrong assumption in regard to the law which binds these facts together in a universal system. And the injurious, which binds these facts together, the injurious results of misapprehension upon which a vital question are so radical and far-reaching that we cannot too forcibly urge the necessity of clear understanding the true nature of the point at issue. In other words, he's saying it does such injury to an individual when they begin to study this stuff. It is so deep. I have some deep books. I read Carl Jung, deep. Carl Jung, you have to study him very, very long time, in my estimation. And then there's books by others that are very, very deep. And some of them actually, those books want to say to you, you shouldn't desire anything. You shouldn't desire anything. Now, what he says is after you study them and you go to that point that you don't desire anything, it can be a great injury to individuals. I'm not saying that is an exact truth. However, what he is saying here is you must be aware. You've got to be able to navigate this space that we're talking about here. And so, stripped of all accessories and embellishments, the question resolves itself into this: which shall we choose for our portion, life or death? There can be no accommodation between the two, and whichever we select as our guiding principle must produce results of a kind proper to itself. The whole of this momentous question turns on the place that we assign to desire in our thought system. Is the tree of life in the midst of the garden of the soul, or is it the upas tree creating a wilderness of death all around? So he's saying that really that's what you got to determine. Is your life about life, or is your life about death? Is that what you look forward to? Is it life, or is it death? What do you really look forward to? Why are you here? What is this all about that you're working with? Let us then try to picture to ourselves the ideal proposed by the systems to which I have alluded. A man who has succeeded in entirely annihilating all desire. To him all things must be alike. The good and the evil must be as one, for nothing has any longer the power to raise any desire in him. He has no longer any feeling which shall prompt him to say, this is good, therefore I choose it, that is evil, therefore I reject it. For all choice implies the perception of something more desirable in what is chosen than in what is rejected, and consequently the existence of that feeling of desire which has been entirely eliminated from the ideal we are contemplating. So what he's basically saying is that when we say desire, it is something that you want. It is something that you're working with. It is something that's moving you forward. And as a result of that, you move forward to that desire. And normally people desire something that's good. Normally something that's good for them. And so the desire becomes another word for what God would have you to have. What God would have you to have. And so it becomes very important. So you're working with this aspect. And so there's a whole writing in regard to this. There's something that really is pulling you forward. And it becomes very, very important that a person is clear. It says, desire is the force behind all things. It is the moving principle of the universe, the inmost center of all life, inmost center of all life. Hence, to take the negation of desire for our primal principle is to endeavor to stamp our life itself. But what we have to do is to acquire the requisite knowledge by which to guide our desires to their true objects of satisfaction. To do this is the whole end of knowledge, and any knowledge applied otherwise is only a partial knowledge, which, having failed in its purpose, is nothing but ignorance. Desire is thus the sum total of the livingness of life, for it is that in which all movement originates, whether on the physical level or the spiritual. In a word, desire is the creative power. Desire brings about creation. Desire brings about creation and must be fully and carefully guarded, trained, and directed accordingly. But thus to seek to develop it to the highest perfection is the very opposite of trying to kill it outright. In other words, when you have it, you then develop it. That's what the 8 A's of transformation is about. When you have awareness, that's our word for desire. Awareness, there's something that comes from within you that you become aware of. Then you begin to take steps, the following steps in regard to that. Desire has fulfillment for its correlative. The desire and its fulfillment are bound together. What he's saying is Alpha and Omega are bound together. That's why I'm reading this. Alpha and Omega are bound together. Our awareness and assimilation are bound together. That's why I'm reading this entire thing. Bound together as cause and effect, he said. And when we realize the law of their sequence, we shall be more than ever impressed with the supreme importance of desire as a great center of life. Now, this is vital. That's why I'm reading this particular item. Now, initially, with all the reading that I've just done and all that I will do with Alpha and Omega, which is the next item, Alpha and Omega, the first and the last, that's where I'm reading right now. What does it mean? It means the entire series of causation from the first originating movement to the final and complete result. We may take this on any scale for the creation, from the creation of the cosmos to the creation of a lady's robe. He says on any scale, Alpha and Omega. I just read that he said that they are bound together. And what he's saying here in the chapter entitled Alpha and Omega, he says they are bound together. In other words, what you see at the point of desire, what you see at the point of the Alpha, is really the Omega experience. They are guaranteed. They are bound together. What you see at awareness is what you will have at assimilation. And this is vital because the text says, before you call, I will answer. You've already have the answer. This is why I have the aspect that it says, no, it already happened. KIAH. Because if you see it, if you actually see it, then you can know it already happened. Now, I'm still in this chapter. It's called Alpha and Omega. And this is so vitally important. This is so vitally important. Now, he says here Divine mind, which was manifested in the objective form of the eyes of the seer, and therefore presented the Alpha and Omega of that idea in the majesty of divine glory. But if we grasp the truth that the thing is already existent in the thought, let me read that again. Divine mind, which was manifested in objective form to the eyes of the seer, and therefore presented the Alpha and Omega of that idea in all the majesty of divine glory. But if we grasp the truth that the thing is already existent in the thought, do we not see that the transcendent Omega must already existent in the divine ideal of every one of us? If on the plane of the absolute time is not, then does it not follow that this glorified humanity, what he's talking about is in the book of Revelation. If on the plane of the absolute, time is not, there's no time with God. No time as far as when we look at time. Like time, one day followed by the next day, followed by the next day. No such thing as chronos time with God. No such time. There's kairos time with God, which is just right time. God, will you sing that time? He's an on-time God. There's kairos time. God is omnipresent. Omnipresent. So there's right now time with God. Always. And so it said, if on the plane of the absolute time is not, then does it not follow that this glorified human is a present fact in divine mind? This is so powerful. And if this is so, then the fact is eternally true regarding every human being. That's why we talk about the authentic self. That person is already inside of you. That person is already inside of you. And Jesus Christ, when he talked about an individual and talked to an individual, he saw that person, spoke to that person, and called that person forward. This is so vital. So vital to understand. When you do this whole thing, and I'm just jumping over this is just so important for an individual. There's another chapter in that particular book that I have in this particular item where it's called The Creative Power of Thought. And then there's another one called The Great Affirmative. And then, as I said, there's another one that is called The Octave. All of these are seeking to say the very same thing. Every one of them is seeking to say the same thing. Why is he repeating the same thing? And why am I repeating the same thing? Because of the aspect that it's like trying to get through the barriers of the mind that have been built over time and seeking to say something that individuals normally have not heard before. But it's so vital. Remember, you want to change something. That's why you're here. That's why you are here. And so that's what we said in regard to an individual using an Apple computer. They have the idea that they can change the world. That's why you're here now. That's the people that we're seeking by the grace of God to reach. This is something else. I'm going to end this whole piece. I could read the entire 8 Days of Transformation item that we have here. Again, we have this Moline tea on a lighter scale. You can get your free size. You can say whichever size you would like. This is 4 cups. It's already done. We can send it out. It's free to you. You have to pay for shipping and handling. I don't even know what that would cost, but we got to figure that out. And you can send us an email, tell us what size you want. We'll work that out. And then we have the leaves, and It wouldn't cost as much to mail out to you. People who want to change the world, become your authentic self. Those are the people that we're talking to. We help you to identify your desire. We help you to identify your why, your how. After you've identified your what, that's what this is all about. We're going to end now. Blessings to you. Take care. Dr. Dennis L. Waters Sr. Blessings. Bye-bye.